EU government for dismantling of the so-called political police, filmed here by AlJazeera. A force which harassed and spied on Tunisians for so many years.
The Ministry of Interior announcement came on its Facebook page. It just shows you how times have changed in Tunisia. This once hated institution is now using the same social sites which helped in the uprising to get its own message across.
It's not clear how members of this once powerful security force will now react. The Prime Minister says this is a dangerous period for the country. His challenge now to take Tunisia to the next election and deliver the democracy people here fought and died for. Nazanin Bashiri, AlJazeera, Tunis.
Shia Muslims have been pushing for more rights in Bahrain in protests directed at the Sunni royal family. And in their latest demonstration, around 200 Shia protesters have been rallying outside the US embassy, calling for Washington to stop backing the monarchy. Protesters have been camping at Manama's Pearl roundabout since last month, but their standers want only minor concessions. Zainab Al-Khawaja is a protest organizer in Manama. She says protesters want the US to stop supporting the Bahraini government.
We want America not to get involved. We can overthrow this regime. We can. The people of Bahrain is strong, just like the people of Egypt. All we want is for America not to support the dictatorship in Bahrain, because people here, they're going to have to sacrifice so much more if the Americans decide to support the regime.
Sultan Qaboos of Oman has ordered a major cabinet reshuffle after weeks of anti-government protests in the strategic Gulf state. State TV is reporting that the Sultan named several new ministers in key posts, including the person who oversees the economy. The move appears to be the latest in a string of concessions aimed at appeasing ongoing protests as people demand jobs and political reforms. To Africa now, and South Sudan's been hit by a spate of killings with more than 50 dead in 2 days. Southern soldiers are fighting two separate rebel groups in Jonglei and Upper Nile State. All sides have suffered casualties, and it's unclear how many civilians have died in the crossfire. Such violence continues to plague the South, which officially became a new country in July. Only 4 days ago, it will become a new country, rather, in July. 33 people were killed in the disputed Abyei region. Now, pro-government forces in Somalia have taken control of a strategic town in the west of the country. An official says rebel Al-Shabaab fighters abandoned the town of Luk on Monday morning without putting up a fight. It's being presented as a victory for the new transitional government, which has now been in place for 100 days. Vigilante groups loyal to Côte d'Ivoire's disputed president say they'll do whatever it takes to keep him in power. Gangs have been looting homes of opposition members. Others have set up roadblocks in Abidjan. They've been giving their side of the story to Mohamed Ado.
Ruling the streets of Abidjan, young men take matters into their own hands. Hundreds of them pouring into the streets, setting up roadblocks and searching drivers. They say they're here to help the police and army ensure that Logo Bagbo remains the president of their country. Their loyalty to the man is unshakable.
We shall die to protect Gbagbo, and we are doing this to defend the constitution of Côte d'Ivoire. Ouattara is going against the very constitution he voted for.
They take nothing to chance. Nothing misses their attention, and they don't mind who they upset.
I don't appreciate their attitude. I urge them to be polite as they go about what they're doing.
These young men say that their work on the streets has largely been successful and that they managed to nab a number of firearms destined for the rebels in the north. They are also understand instructions to ensure that the movement of UN personnel here in the capital is curtailed.
The UN forces have shown they are not impartial. They are biased. They are responsible for what is happening in Côte d'Ivoire. They have been arming and transporting rebels.
Conditions continue to worsen for civilians as the violence spirals. At least 200,000 people have been displaced, particularly from Abidjan, according to the United Nations. More than 360 people have also died since November. It's a toll that's bound to rise even higher if the current political crisis continues. Mohamed Ado, AlJazeera, Abidjan.
Rallies have been taking place in Jordan, with the country's Minister for Media joining journalists protesting against his own government. That story is coming up. And as Mexico continues to battle drug-related violence, many are looking towards spirituality for comfort.
It's 36 to 38 degrees Celsius. No higher, no lower. It's soft, but not too soft. It's just enough to smooth things out. It's all of this, halfway to anywhere, with plenty of time to spare. The Qatar Airways Premium Terminal in Doha. 5-star service for first and business class passengers. Qatar Airways, world's 5-star airline.
Welcome back. A reminder of the latest on the Libyan uprising. Forces loyal to Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi continue to strike back hard against rebel positions. Rebels are preparing for fresh fighting near the town of Bin Jawad, which was retaken by government forces on Sunday. AlJazeera has learned that the British soldiers and the diplomat released by Libyan rebels on Sunday were captured after an exchange of gunfire. President Barack Obama says Washington and its allies are still considering a military response to the crisis in Libya. Gulf Arab leaders have called for a UN-enforced no-fly zone. David Courtwright is Director of Policy Studies at the University of Notre Dame's Institute for International Peace. He comes to us from South Bend, Indiana, in the U.S. Thanks a lot for joining us, Mr. Courtwright. Are we beginning to see the true scale or the true extent of Gaddafi's firepower after what could have been considered perhaps a bit of a honeymoon period for the rebels?
Well, it's becoming much more dangerous, more complicated as this is turning into a civil war. And what began as an effort to prevent the mass killing of civilians has now become a problem of civil conflict. So it's much more complicated for the U.S. and the international community in terms of how to respond.
Yeah, talking about it being much more complicated for the U.S. and the international community, what are they more worried about? Are they more worried about the consequences of action or the consequences of inaction?
Well, both have problems potentially. I think still that action is necessary to prevent the mass killing of civilians, and the Security Council